So
welcome to the podcast. Introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll talk about what you do.
Awesome. Let me put these guys up.
So, repping these, or just ones you like?
These are ones that I like. These are also three that are very different.
Okay.
So I figured as we would go through this podcast, we would maybe try a little bit of each,
that sounds
and
good.
you would be able to kind of figure out what you like.
Yeah.
I think that's fun. Like I have a big passion for like helping people understand stuff. So whether it's coaching, either in my like previous kind of role as a commercial gym trainer, it was very much like, here is how to do this exercise. Here is, exactly what muscle to feel during, the movement. And then I got into online coaching, and now it's more like, here's how to structure your life so that you can lose weight and not hate the process. Which, let's be honest, when most people try to lose weight, it sucks.
Yeah.
No one likes losing.
They start in January and they give up by...
like February?
Maybe.
Maybe
earlier.
So. If you make it to Easter, you're crushing it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got into the same thing with whiskey. I wanted to be kind of a guide for people to figure out what they like. Because there's a lot of people that want to get into whiskey, but they don't really know how, right? They've been drinking Jack or Jim their entire life, or maybe they ventured into Maker's Mark, and they normally drink it on the rocks, but they see a lot of people drinking it neat, and they're like, they'll watch a YouTube video.
Oh, do you need rocks? I didn't even ask about that.
No. I'm not a rocks guy.
Okay.
But they'll see, a YouTube channel and someone drinks whiskey and it's like, oh, I taste vanilla and oak and cherry and toasted marshmallows. And it's like, how the hell do these people do this? And I think it's kind of cool to just kind of go through that process with people, let them figure out what they like, what they don't like, why they don't like it right now, and just kind of be, a whiskey Sherpa.
Yeah.
To put a coin on it. So let's start. Do you like sweet stuff, or do you like?
I like all the above.
Okay.
So I'm like, I don't know enough to say what I like and I don't like. Let me put it that way.
Cool. So let's start right in the kind of middle of the road.
Okay.
We'll start with this one. So this is actually a rye whiskey.
Okay.
It's but New Riff recently started distributing to Texas, and they do tasting notes on the side of the bottle.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think is really cool.
Say what do you expect it to taste like?
Exactly.
So like taste buds as.
On this one, like on the nose, you expect maple and red apple, and then on the flavor you get dark fruit buttercream, and then the finish you get vanilla. So these are a lot of very like entry friendly tasting notes.
Okay.
So if you, for example, tried a whiskey and the tasting notes were leather, tobacco, and cigars, that's definitely someone's favorite. Yeah. But a lot of like less experienced whiskey drinkers, not so much. But you can try this, and you're like, cool. Like I like vanilla flavors. I like apple.
What are you supposed to do? Sniff it first, like wine? What do you do?
Yeah. So don't swirl it. Interestingly, we want to try.
Swirl it. Explain that.
Swirl it.
Oh, swirl.
Don't swirl.
Swirl.
Yes.
With
sorry.
the R.
The accent.
No, that's good.
So we actually don't swirl whiskey because we want the alcohol to stay just above the liquid. We don't want the alcohol to come up, right?
So unlike a wine.
Yeah, with a wine, you swirl it to release some of those vapors up so that you can smell them. We don't do that here because we don't want alcohol up our nose because then it smells like gasoline. Mm-hmm. Instead, we want the whiskey flavors to inhale those.
I didn't know that.
So you don't swirl. Instead, what you do is you nose and you keep your mouth open as well. Because when you
gas it, let off gas, leave your mouth open so it doesn't feel like the gas as much?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't want alcohol to fill our sinuses, and if they do, we don't want them to just hold there. We want circulation through the mouth, so that way you can not burn your nose out with alcohol. So, as you
what am I smelling for?
So, generally it's like, do you smell sweet? Do you smell like wood or oak? You can typically describe whiskey as dull or bright.
Okay.
So that's where we kind of start.
Is this brighter or duller? What is this compared?
I would go with brighter.
Yeah.
Most ryes are going to be on the brighter, kind of spicier end. And then once you figured out, is it dull, is it bright, then you go into, is it sweet, is it spicy? Huh. So we take a small sip, let it kind of coat the tongue.
Like half a teaspoon?
Let it coat the tongue. So this is a rye, so it's going to be a little bit spicier, but you still get some of that sweet come through. Yeah. To me, especially on the finish. And once you've had it let it kind of coat the tongue a little bit, now your palate is actually ready to like taste alcohol properly. It's kind of like dipping your toe in the water before you jump in. If you jump into water, it's kind of a shock, whether it's cold or whether it's hot. To it. Exactly.
So A little bit on your tongue first, just kind of...
Yep. Let it know
Okay.
what's coming, right? 'Cause just like a workout, you don't jump into all the crazy shit to start with. You start
You
by
just don't.
warming up.
Yeah.
You shouldn't, anyway. Many people do. And then you take a little bit of a bigger sip. And it's called chewing your whiskey. You let it coat the tongue, you let it kind of go all over the mouth. This time there should be a little bit less of that alcohol burn, and some of the flavors will come through a little bit more. So, we might, I get fruit sweetness out of this. I can't necessarily tell, pear or plum or something like that.
Yeah.
But I taste fruit.
This
As
is called
opposed
what?
to... What's that?
I'm seeing what this is called.
New Riff.
New Riff.
Yeah, no, they're one of the... In whiskey circles, they are known as being able to make really good whiskey that isn't that old.
Okay.
Now, a lot of young...
So good whiskey is... Really good stuff is aged well.
Can be. In bourbon and rye specifically, the good stuff is normally between 4 and 10 years old.
After that, it's too old or too new.
Before that, it's often too new. Don't get me
young.
wrong, there is some good young whiskey, it's just really hard to make. And the older stuff can be good, but you have to balance the level of oak, right? If you leave something in a oak barrel for 20 years,
Yeah.
it's going to take on a lot of that oak
It
flavor.
tastes like oak. Yeah.
And you don't want to drink the lumber aisle at Home Depot.
I never thought about doing that, but yeah.
Yeah.
How did you get into whiskey and learning about it? And have you always liked whiskey? I guess was your go-to.
No, actually,
okay.
so when I grew up, I grew up in England.
Where are you
from? Norfolk, England.
Okay.
So unless you follow soccer, you will have no kind of idea where that is.
Which team do you like over there?
Norwich City. They're in
Is that
yellow and green. They're one of those yo-yo teams. So they're in the Premier League
bad,
for
good, bad. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's we're in the top division, then we go down a level. A few years go by, back in the top division, and then we get relegated again. So that's where I was from, and we don't have a lot of whiskey there.
Okay.
England has a lot more Scotch than it does bourbon for obvious geographical availability reasons. But we would drink a lot of hard cider. And we don't even call it hard cider, we just call it cider.
It's cider, yeah.
Yeah. So, there would be
Cider.
craft stuff. There would be, there's a great cider brewing place, I guess, brewery?
I feel
like there's something...
It seems like that would be the right word, but
It seems like it. It doesn't feel like it. But a
great
great...
same as a beer, but I'm like,
Yeah. A
distillery.
cidery, maybe?
Not distillery. What would it be?
No, you don't distill cider. Maybe cidery. But
That sounds good.
this wonderful place called Aspel's that was down, and I have a lot of fond memories of drinking that, kind of growing up. And then it wasn't until I came over here, which is a story in itself, but then during COVID, no one had anything to do, so lots of us started drinking at noon. I was a commercial...
So you were over there during COVID?
I was over here during COVID.
Over here during COVID, okay.
Over here during COVID.
Where am I a little closer to you?
Sure thing. I was at a commercial gym, Cowboys Fit in Frisco. Very high-end, commercial gym. During COVID, you couldn't do anything. We got furloughed. We went on,
So you were a trainer during the time?
Yes.
Okay. So that's your background the last however many years?
Yeah. I was an overweight kid. Got myself not overweight, and then that kind of inspired me to help other people do it, which is honestly the origin story of a lot of personal trainers. No one gets into personal training because of the money and the fame.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
You can make a lot more money with a lot less effort with much better working hours doing almost any other job. And actually, there's a stat that blows a lot of people's minds. It's people who get into the fitness industry, 90% of them have left 12 months later.
Huh.
The churn rate is huge because the barrier to entry in the industry is very, very low. I got certified to be a personal trainer in one day. I turned up, I took a test.
Because no one wanted to do it? Or because...
No, that's just how easy it is.
Oh, it's easy, okay.
It's just, you turn up, you take one test, and you go home.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I was like, cool, I am now a certified personal trainer. That's
now
it.
I have to find clients.
Exactly. No one teaches you how to find clients.
They don't teach you the business side of things. They teach you, here's the health side.
Exactly.
The muscle side.
Yeah, and it's I understand the cross-bridge cycling pattern during muscle contraction, but I don't know how to sell anyone on the idea of getting healthy.
So how long have you been in this industry?
That's
personal, not the...
personal
not
training.
The amazing drinks side.
7, 8 years.
Okay.
At this point. Maybe Yeah, officially probably that much. Knowing that this was what I wanted to do well over a decade.
Okay.
Because I went into college for exercise science with the idea that I was going to become a fitness professional. I thought I wanted to go into strength and conditioning and be like coaching athletes. Like pretty much everyone who gets into the industry is like, oh, I'm gonna work with Patrick Mahomes. I'm gonna go work with these amazing soccer teams. And then you hit the reality that strength and conditioning professionals are massively overworked, massively underpaid, and have terrible job security.
Always afraid they're gonna.
Yeah, especially in American sports. I did an internship at the University of North Texas for strength and conditioning. Yeah. Had some very good mentors there. Had some people who I will not replicate their mistakes in leadership.
That's good to learn. I'm going to learn from everyone. The good and the bad.
It really is.
I'm a firm believer in that.
And what I saw was me as a college intern. I was part-time. I was doing technically 20 hours a week, unpaid internship. Right.
While attending UNT?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There were graduated full-grown men with families who were doing 40, but in reality 50 to 60 hours unpaid as an intern in the same program. And then...
And you said, I'm going to do this?
That's when I said, I'm not going to do this.
Oh, you're not going to do this.
That's when I realized
I can do this. I'll beat the odds.
Well, one of the guys beat the odds. He got a job.
Someone always beats the odds.
Well, let me finish what he won.
Okay.
He got a job as a high school strength and conditioning coach. Full-time strength and conditioning coaches. Most strength and conditioning coaches are actually teachers who lifted 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. And his starting salary was $25,000.
And this is a full-time.
This full-time
job.
He just busted his ass for over 12 months being an unpaid intern as a grown man to get a job paying $25K. And the strength and conditioning coach of UNT, he made six figures, but it wasn't mind-blowing six figures.
No.
And you know that he's put in probably a decade of hustle. Yeah. And it's how many other industries can you hustle for a decade and be making low six figures? And be genuinely good at what you do? Yeah. If you go work in sales, almost any sales job, and you're good at it, and you hustle for a decade, you're making 150, 200. I think, and maybe I'm insulated.
It depends on the sales job.
You think, you think, insurance, real estate, medical device, the professional sales jobs, and you make more than that, and they're not traveling with the team, right? Their job security
is your family,
exactly. That's a big one, and your job security isn't tied to your head coach. You know what happened to that strength and conditioning coach when the head coach got fired?
He lost his job too.
He lost his job. Yeah. No fault of his own.
No, it's just that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was just a very stark, kind of come to Jesus moment of hey, this is your future. Do you still want to do that? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
So what do you do? You step back and go, okay, I find something else?
Pretty much.
You find a job in sales at that point?
No, so that was on a study abroad year of mine. So I'd done 2 years of college in England. I'd come over, done a study abroad year.
Where did you go to school in England?
University of Birmingham.
Okay.
England, not Alabama, obviously.
Yeah.
Did the study abroad year, did the strength and conditioning internship, actually met my now wife during that year.
There you go.
Went home, finished up the degree, came back to the US on a master's degree visa, mostly to be with said now wife.
Yeah.
And through that master's degree program, I was able to get an internship at Cowboys Fit.
So it was a master's in fitness of some sort?
Yeah, exercise physiology.
Yeah.
So, it was still related. Bluntly, the undergraduate course degree in England was more challenging than the master's degree at UNT.
So is the master's degree basically to give people like you a chance to come over? Is that...
That's not the primary purpose, but I'm probably not the only one. Yeah. Okay. I was like, and we
can work the system.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I got a job as a teaching assistant, so my tuition was reduced.
UNT? Is this when you were at UNT, or is this...
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked 20 hours a week. I was able to get paid. I came out of my master's degree with no debt from that degree.
That's nice.
And I was able to, parlay that into an internship and then a full-time job. And then, Chloe and I got married and I could stay.
Yeah.
We married for love, but the fact that I could stay in the country helps.
It helps.
Absolutely.
It works.
Yeah, so that was, we kind of, I think, zigzagged a little bit, but that was how I got my job as a personal trainer.
Okay.
And then when COVID hit, got furloughed and had nothing to do.
Did everyone pretty much get furloughed? It was like everyone stays home.
Everyone. The gym wasn't open. There was no one for us to train. Yeah,
COVID was so strange. That messed up a lot of things.
It was nuts. Any in-person service role was decimated, and we were lucky that we had a big employer behind us that was like, hey, this is how you apply for what was it, unemployment or whatever, and you got a certain amount that was relative to what you were earning before. And it's like, all right, cool, I'm not starving. That's awesome. Very happy with that. So, but I was just sitting at home all day, and when you sit at home all day and you're in your 20s, you tend to drink a fair amount because there's nothing else to do. So I made friends with my local liquor store manager. Okay. I was going in there, and I was learning about whiskey. I started following a couple of YouTube channels. And
this is when you first started getting into whiskey.
Yeah,
right?
I was not.
Did you talk to the liquor store manager, like, tell me about whiskey?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was the guy. He was just in the bourbon aisle, and he had the T-shirt on. And I was like, hey, tell me a little bit more about this. And then I asked, I guess, a couple of good questions. And he was like, hey, you should come hang out with us, on a Wednesday morning, and sometimes on, a weekday evening. I'll have some friends over, we chat whiskey, we bullshit, whatever it is. So I go over there, again, nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thing that got me a little bit further in. You start chatting, you start comparing bottles. I was like, this is really cool. And the other part of that evening or series of evenings is, the guys asked me what I do. And I'm like, well, I'm a personal trainer. This is what I do. This is how I help people.
Whiskey.
and I was drinking whiskey at the time, and they were like, yeah, I tried that weight loss stuff, but I didn't want to give up whiskey. I didn't the diet told me to stop drinking alcohol, and that was just not something I wanted to do. And I'm like, the light bulb moment. So to speak. And I was like, you can lose weight / be in shape and drink whiskey at the same time. They are not mutually exclusive.
They're like, tell me more.
Yeah, and I was like, cool, no one is servicing this market. There's a clear need for it. I just heard it firsthand from multiple people. So that's when Whiskey Weight Loss was born. And the whole premise of Whiskey Weight Loss as a business is showing people that you don't have to give up the stuff that you enjoy to lose the weight you want to lose. Yeah. You can do both. Now, I also preface this by saying whiskey does not help you lose weight.
No.
We don't take a shot and then work out. That's not how this works. But there is a balance there. You think most diets out there, right? Keto, you got to give up carbs. Yeah. Paleo, you got to give up anything that you can't kill or dig out the ground, right? Whole 30 is similar. You had the low-fat phase for a while where you can't have any fat. 75 hard is currently, very popular. Where it's
what?
75 days of workout twice a day, no alcohol, get outside, read a book. There's a lot of these mental toughness things, physical toughness things.
Yeah.
And it's none of those sound fun. But you know what does sound fun? Whiskey weight loss. People hear it and they're like, dude, what the fuck?
Tell me more.
What the fuck? Exactly.
That's
exactly what it is. I briefly have to tell them that it's not drinking whiskey and then working out, because that's where some people's brains go to.
It's don't lose the joys of life in order to lose weight.
Exactly. And it's entirely possible, but most people don't understand.
If something could be continuing repetition and you make that part of your life, then it'll be okay.
Exactly.
So if workout's part of that, then good. Keep it going. Don't do I'm going to do 70 days. You're going to burn out.
Exactly.
I did P90X years ago. Mm-hmm. I did it. It was P89X, but close enough. I had one day where I'd pull my back or something weird. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, so I did that. And I'm like, check. I don't want to do that again.
Exactly.
So, I was like, that was a lot. I couldn't eat. I'm like, but it was, So it's doable, but it's not
sustainable.
Sustainable, yeah.
Exactly. And the whole premise of this is I love the question when trying to solve a problem. I love the question, what would this look like if it were easy? And I kind of take that and I say, what would weight loss look like if it was sustainable? It's eating the right things most of the time.
So I'm assuming that's part of your talking. Weight loss. It was okay, let's talk about your normal meals. I'm saying when you sit down with someone, I'm assuming you say, let's talk about normal meals that you should be eating and you shouldn't be eating.
Yeah.
Is that part of it? It's not just talk about whiskey.
No, it's not.
It's life change, but long-term.
Exactly. So we
shifting.
take stock of what your normal food patterns are. Are you a 3 square meals person? Are you a 6 small meals a day kind of guy? Do you like eat the same thing Monday through Friday and then super social on the weekends? Do you like having a drink every single night? Like, we take stock of what that is, and then we don't look to overhaul it, we look to optimize it. Like, I love the, like the 80-20 rule in business?
Yeah.
I use something called
everything
the...
in life. So
exactly.
It's pretty much...
For losing weight, I think it's more the 90-10 rule. 90% of the time, you've got to be doing mostly the stuff that you know you should be doing. Doesn't mean it has to suck. Doesn't mean it's rabbit food. It's, it's higher protein, higher fiber, less processed, all that stuff that I help people understand. And then 10% of the time, you have some fun. Right? Whether that is whiskey, whether it's cocktails, whether it's pizza, whatever it is, nothing is off the table. Because when you take things off the table, we start craving it. Yeah. And cravings lead to binging, which leads to putting you right back at the starting line. Yeah. Exactly. Like, we talk about the typical journey of what happens when someone loses weight. It's set these concrete rules that you can't break. No carbs, no alcohol, I can't have pizza, can't have whiskey, whatever. You do it for a certain amount of time. Eventually you break because you're human and you're not designed to be a robot. And then you go, well, this was dumb. I don't want to do this. All I want to do is eat 17 slices of pizza and 15 beers.
Yeah.
And then you feel guilty about it because you just ruined all of this hard work. And then guilt leads to shame, which leads to kind of like mild depression when it comes to health. And then you go, screw this isn't for me. I'm just going to accept I'm going to be fat and unhealthy. And then that goes on for like 6 months, a year, 5 years. And you go, I'm really bored of being fat and unhealthy. I'm going to do the diet again.
And then you start all over again.
Rinse, repeat.
And then you're 50 and it's harder to do it.
Exactly. So and physiologically, there's actually like some truth to that. Yeah. Every time you crash diet, like you lose 20 pounds in a month, your metabolism slows down.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Then when you regain the weight, again, quickly, right? You regain 20 pounds over a month or 2 months. You have the same weight, but your metabolism doesn't recover at the same speed. So you're in the same body fat percentage with a slower metabolism. And you rinse and repeat that over and over, and you eventually just get in a position where you can't win. Like you're playing a game and the cards are stacked against you. And let alone all of the other stuff that happens. Like, let's take a moment to talk about like food culture in America.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason that America is one of the most overweight countries in the world. And I pin a lot of that on like restaurant culture and the big food companies. And this is
food meaning like
big
the top 4 food companies that
food manufacturers. Because we now have a really good understanding, we have for a while, of how the human brain responds to food. And I was talking about this with someone the other day. There's kind of different levels of food processing, right? Let's take a banana, right?
Yeah.
You pick it off the tree, you eat it like that. There's no processing involved. Something like yogurt might be next, where it's like you start with milk, you do a process to it, and you end up with yogurt. Yeah. And if it's fat-free, high protein yogurt, fantastic. We love that stuff. Then you go one step further and it's like, all right, we've got something like bread. So you've combined a few things together. There might be some, stuff added to make it last longer on the shelf. All right, not great, but not the worst thing in the world. You can totally eat bread multiple times a week and still lose weight. Not an issue. Where America does it differently is they pump a bunch of sugar and salt into it, which makes it more palatable. Coming from England
it's a drug. Sugar is a drug, and everything it makes it taste better in your body or your mouth, I should say.
So here's where I'm going to disagree with you, Bert.
So it doesn't.
Sugar is not a drug. Let me give you a great example that illustrates my point.
Okay.
Have you ever looked at a jar of sugar or a bag of sugar and gone?
I just want a spoon of that.
Exactly.
No,
I've never done that.
No, I haven't either.
So it's not sugar, and it's not fat.
So it's something mixed between the two that triggers. Okay.
Correct. And that's
is that the salt? You said the salt and the sugar, the combination, or is it?
It's sugar, salt, fat combined in the right ratio that does weird things to our brain. Because when you think about it, we're still kind of working with hardware that we had in prehistoric times.
Yeah.
Right? In nature, we don't have high fat, carb, and salt all mixed together. Right? Pizzas don't grow on trees.
I haven't seen one yet.
Not yet. Still looking for that elusive pizza tree. So when we take a bite of that, it lights up dopamine receptors in our brain. And instead of those foods making us full, we actually crave them more because our brain chemistry is going, give me more, give me more. And then food companies have understood that if you mix up textures as well, so if you have crunchy and cheesy pizza, right?
Yeah.
Crispy.
Yeah.
Soft, doughy, right?
Some sweet tomato sauce.
Exactly. Right? It all starts adding up. The two things that we can use to fight against that are protein and fiber. They're the two things we can use to kind of like, they're the things we have in our tool belt,
so like
in
the
our
meat
holster.
and the salads.
Yeah, but not even salads so much. Fruits, veggies, like straight normal potatoes.
Yeah.
Pretty high in fiber. If you don't add a ton of cheese and butter to your potato is one of the best weight loss foods in the world.
Sweet potato or normal potato?
Normal potato and sweet potato. They're both fine.
I like sweet potatoes.
Like one of the things that the low carb diet got wrong was that they started cutting out
starches. No more potatoes.
Right. Potatoes are great.
Yeah.
There was actually a study that looked at, they gave everyone like the same number of calories of like 30 different foods.
Yeah.
Some people got fish, some people got pork, chicken, veggies, beans, brownies, cookies. You can obviously tell that the brownies and the cookies did not fill people up. The single best food in that study, boiled potatoes.
Boiled potatoes. Okay.
Yep. Does that mean everyone should now eat boiled potatoes? No, but...
Penn Jillette did that. Penn and Teller? He did like a year of only eating potatoes. He was doing weight loss, just potatoes. You should look him up. Because he did like a diet, and he's like, I picked potatoes, and that's all I eat.
Yeah.
No salt, no butter, no, just potatoes every day.
And
and then he lost weight, and he's kept it off since then. So like he tried something, he's like, I'm just doing it. It's like a cold turkey potato. I'm like, okay.
It's not my chosen method.
I wouldn't have done it either, but that's his story.
Worked.
That's his story.
Yeah, and that's a great example of why just cutting out carbs is not like a sensible way to do this.
Yeah,
there's more nuance to it. So like I use this analogy with pizza anytime like I talk to people. It's like if I have a whole pizza in front of me, I'm probably eating 6 slices. And then that should fill me up. That is enough calories to fill me up. That's probably like my day's calories.
Yeah.
All I can think about the rest of the day is those final 2 pieces. Maybe you're the same.
Okay.
Maybe.
Possibly.
But because of the carbs, the fats, the salts, the lack of protein, lack of fiber, the chewy, the crispy, all of the things that make our brain go, give me more.
Okay.
They're all firing. And then you consider the average American, like these ultra-processed foods, like pizza's an example, but you've got cookies, all that stuff that is not good for you. The reason we crave it so much is because it literally does things to our brain that triggers things. And that, why it's worse in America is that milk has a bunch of sugar added to it. Why it does, you've got the fat in the milk, you've got sweet in the milk.
So they add sugar in the...
Yeah. Dude, if you ever go drink milk in the UK, you may not enjoy it all that much because of just the sheer lack of sugar. Yeah. Bread is another one. Tomato ketchup is another one.
There's a lot of the tomato. I'm going to turn off and get this computer.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that in... Mute. Wake up, computer, wake up. Let's go. Don't chirp at me. I'll just turn it down here. Tomato is an interesting one. The sweetness of it and how they add it to like the pizza and like I don't know what else is tomatoey that people like crave.
I think marinara sauce is a good example because they add a bunch of sugar to it. Like if you again, no one's like grabbing tomatoes and eating them like apples.
No.
But when you puree it and then add a bunch of stuff to it, you add sugar and salt.
A bunch of them and not even know it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just like this, that's what we're up against when it comes to weight loss.
So when you sit down with people, do you say, here, this is how your normal meal has to be? Eat 2 good meals a day? Do you say 3 meals? Does it all depends on the person?
Depends on the person.
Okay.
Because everyone has their own preferences. Because if you normally eat 2 meals a day and you have a coach that says, hey, I need you to eat 6 meals a day, how sustainable does that feel?
Yeah.
Not very.
It's not. It's going to be tough.
If you hate breakfast and I'm like, I need you to eat 4 scrambled eggs and 2 slices of bacon at 7 a.m., you're going to hate that. Other people, that's their dream.
Yeah,
they can't wait to roll out of bed and get cooking on a skillet.
Yeah.
So it depends on the person. There are certain things that, pretty much everyone has to work with. So again, like protein, fiber, level of processed foods, understanding calories. Like, there are certain things that just apply to pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
But after that, it's more of an art than a science. Because you just figure out what works for this person. And then you combine that with like the workout plans that we write, which is, again, meeting people where they're at. If you've never stepped foot in a gym before, your program is going to look very different than someone who's done a bodybuilding competition before.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 people in that position. I've just onboarded a new client who's never worked out in a gym before. I've got
pull them in a gym, or you say, we'll start with push-ups at home type thing?
I ask them. I say, what makes you comfortable?
Okay.
Are you open to the gym? If yes, I will create something super simple for you. If you want to do it at home, I recommend you buy these couple pieces of equipment that are going to cost about $50, and we can use that for the first couple months. And if I've got a bodybuilder, and I've got one of these, former bodybuilder, used to be in amazing shape, had a family, not in the best shape anymore, but, knows his way around a gym, happy to work out 6 times a week. That program is going to look very different than the gentleman who's working out, for the first time. So again, it's just tailoring.
Yeah.
And I think most people assume when they lose weight, they have to change their lifestyle around the diet. Right? 75 hard. We just mentioned that. I just explained what it is. Massively working around the plan. That's backwards. The plan has to work around you. It's got to make it as easy as possible for you to achieve what you want to achieve. And the biggest compliment that I get on a fairly regular basis is that someone finishes my process and they go, it's easier than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it should feel.
Forever.
Exactly.
It's making new
habits
for life.
It's a lifestyle change. Yeah. And the lessons that I try and teach in my program, my process, they work, we do them for 8 weeks, which is how long the initial program is, but they should last for the next up to 8 decades. And when you look at it like that, it brings everything into focus much clearer, I think. I'll have some people be like, I lost 3 pounds last week, I only lost 1 pound this week. I'm like,
that's okay.
Yeah, it's great. Fast forward 10 years, do you think you'll care? Well, no. Okay, cool. All right.
It's a journey.
It is.
It's the next step.
It's a
tomorrow.
Step. Yeah, it's a journey, and it's got to be, there'll be times when you push harder. There'll be times when you push less. When you go on vacation, no one's caring. If you lose weight on vacation, kudos to you. Yeah. But most people don't. They maintain, they might gain a pound. And then 1 week later, they've lost that pound and another one.
Yeah.
And you just kind of chip away. You chip away, you lose weight, you probably plateau for a week or two, you lose some more weight. And it's just really interesting to kind of go through the process. And then once people kind of see how it works, they look back and they go, I feel like such an idiot for doing it the way I used to do it.
They feel like an idiot because they were overthinking and overworking it, but they didn't know.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know.
Well, you know what people tell you, and the people are telling you are selling you something else.
Yeah.
So,
and that's actually another thing, like the big diet kind of industries. So, like Red Mountain weight loss, or if you hear like the soda commercials, right? What they do is they will sell you a very effective, short-term but very unsustainable approach. Often they sell you their meals, which they can make extra money on.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, do this for 90 days, right? Buy our meals, cook dinner on your own, eat our food the rest of the day. And people have lost stupid amounts of weight.
Yeah.
50, 100 pounds in a very short time frame. And then they either reach the end of the program and can't afford to continue, or they reach the end of the program and they're like, I can't do this anymore. And they stop. And they regain the weight. They go into the depression spiral that we talked about earlier. And fast forward a year, 2 years, 5 years, they're like, you know what? I really liked how I looked when I was 100 pounds less. This time will be different. Mm-hmm. And that's what everyone tells themselves. They're like, I'm going to do exactly the same thing or something very similar, but this time is going to be different because I'm saying it will. And the definition of insanity is trying the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah, that's true.
And people do this loop over and over again. Sometimes it's for decades.
Yeah.
And people end up, just like you mentioned, it's like they end up 50, where it's a lot harder. They've got more responsibilities. And it's like if you bite the bullet and do the hard work up front, because you've got to let go of a lot of baggage to do it the right way. Like a conversation I actually had earlier today with a guy, he was like, I've only ever done body part splits, right? Leg day, chest day, arm day. That's the bodybuilder, but bro split.
It's leg day. Ugh.
Exactly. Squats and squats and squats. And then my approach is different. We'll do, mostly every muscle, every workout.
Okay.
It's not because it's that much more effective. It's because logistically it makes sense. You seem like a busy man, Bert.
Yeah.
You got stuff going on, right? To do arm day, chest day, back day, shoulder day, leg day, maybe a little bit of abs somewhere. You have to hit the gym 5 times a week.
And if you don't,
something
you get
misses.
huge arms.
Exactly. But if you do, instead of doing 8 exercises for each muscle group once per week, you could do 1 exercise for back, 1 for chest, 1 for shoulders, 1 for arms, 1 for legs on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. However you split it up. And that way, if you miss a day, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that muscle's been worked 3 to 4 other times to a lesser extent, but it's been worked. So that way you don't miss anything. Because if you take if you miss 2 Friday workouts in a row, that means whatever, leg day, you haven't done it in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you start losing some of that strength, and then you get back in the gym, and your first workout sucks because you haven't done legs in 3 weeks, and then you're sore, so you don't move as much because your legs are sore, and it just spirals.
When you have a client, do you meet them in the gym and go with them, or do you give them a plan and say, I'll check out with you in a month?
So somewhere in the middle. I give them a plan. So my program is 100% online.
Okay.
So I've got clients on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and the north-ish of America, and then down in Texas as well. And I'll send them their plan. It comes to an app on their phone, so it's just a button press away. But it pops up with the plan.
Whiskey Weight Loss app?
Correct.
Oh, nice.
Clients only though. You can't. You can't just go find it.
Yeah.
But there will be the plan. There will be an overview. There will be the exercise. How many reps? How many sets?
For them. You set up a plan for them and say, here's what you follow daily.
Correct. Here's a video how to do it. Here's some written cues to do it. Here's how to track what you did last time so you know what to do for this time. And it's every detail they will ever need for their workouts. And if they do have a question on form, or technique, or like, hey, I don't know if I'm feeling this in the right spot, I meet with all my clients every week during the initial coaching process. So they just say...
So remotely then, if it's someone, say you're doing a Zoom call type thing.
Yeah, a Zoom call, right? So we'll jump on a Zoom call and they'll say, hey, can you watch me do a push-up and see if I'm doing it right? I'll be like, yeah, sure. Okay, cool, your hips are sagging a little bit. Try this next time. They're like, okay, cool, that works. Okay. And then they go and take that and put it in the gym on their own. And I'm a big fan of using this analogy. You give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day.
Teach a man a fish, he'll never starve. Or never
exactly.
Hungry. Yeah.
Well, I give people a fish initially. I'll be like, hey, here's some snack ideas. Here's some recipe ideas. Here's some meal swaps. Like, hey, instead of doing this, do this instead. Right? Because people need that at the start.
Like, I like a burger 3 times a week. So you're like, let's try this instead? Or is it...
Yeah, it's like, okay, if you home make burgers, right, 3 times a week, I'm like, cool, well, instead of the normal bun, can you grab one of the low-carb buns? We'll save about 200 calories there.
Okay.
Instead of using...
calorie count?
A little bit.
Okay.
Because I believe in calorie awareness. This idea that you need to know how many calories are in food. You don't necessarily need to track every single one of them for the rest of time.
You just need to be aware.
But you need to understand, and that comes from, do calorie counting for a couple weeks. So you understand what your favorite foods contain, what your, regular meals are, and after that, some people love calorie counting, some people hate it. Mm-hmm. For people who hate it, they don't have to do it. They just focus on understanding what's in their food and then building habits. People who love to calorie count, I'm like, cool, build these habits and calorie count as well. And you'll probably lose weight faster. But yeah, it's I give people a fish at the start of the process, and then I teach them how to fish, I teach them how to hunt, I teach them how to gather. Right? It's nutrition, exercise, sustainable approach.
And whiskey.
Exactly. Always got to be a little bit of whiskey. And that's the process in a
Is
kind of
whiskey
one
better
flavor.
for you than beer?
I think so.
Because it's not as
There's the
rich in sugars.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sugar in beer. There's carbohydrates.
Not your carbs.
So, but
your body.
people get hung up on that as well. It's like, generally speaking, beer will have more calories per serving than whiskey. Having said that, if you and I were not careful, we could pour these glasses up this tall, and we would be drinking 3 to 4 beers worth of calories in one glass.
Yeah.
So,
Moderation.
moderation. It's
Everything in moderation.
awareness and moderation.
Okay.
And, I don't love this idea of like, oh, whiskey is better than beer. Like, does it have less calories per serving? Yes. It's also easier to overserve yourself. Yeah. You also get a little bit more dehydrated drinking whiskey. Because beer has a lot more water in it per serving.
It does.
So, but if you're drinking water with your whiskey, then that doesn't matter.
So on the rocks.
Yeah. Well,
or mixed with
I would just drink one of these bottles of water that's sitting next to us and, try and drink that.
Thirsty. Yeah.
Drink that throughout the course of the evening. So it's like, is there a better or best? No. But for someone who likes whiskey, like, this is really kind of the only way of doing it.
Okay.
Someone who's a beer drinker, then, maybe you go and find a coach who uses similar principles. But, you can talk about beer on your coaching calls.
Yeah, exactly. How do you find how people find you? Obviously this is unique. So how are you getting customers and
Facebook?
Facebook?
Almost
like ads or just people sharing things going, look at this is crazy. Come look at this thing.
It's a lot of it's all, organic Facebook stuff. So I'm a member of a lot of the whiskey groups, both local and national. So people who just have it, you've got car clubs on Facebook. Yeah. You've got UFO enthusiasts on Facebook. You've got whiskey enthusiasts on Facebook. Basically, I make for genuine friends in those groups. I have a shared common interest.
Yeah.
And eventually they see my Facebook profile and be like, Alex,
what the world is.
Exactly. And they get curious. And it's like, well, this is what I do. Like, is that something you've been thinking about? And they're like, well, I dropped some weight before, but then I came back, and I'm kind of 20 pounds heavier than I want to be. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, tell me, what are your struggles when it comes to weight loss? And they'll be like, well, I get cravings, I eat good most of the time, but then I raid the pantry at night, and I'm like, cool, all right, we can fix that.
Yeah.
And then we just have the conversation. A lot of times it's referrals. A lot of times it's like I'll post something about a client's success story, and someone will be like, I want that.
Yeah.
And then, they'll leave a comment or they'll like it, and I'll send them a message, be like, thanks so much for liking my post. And they'll go, all right, tell me how you do it.
Yeah.
What's the secret? And I have to gently explain that there is no secret. There's just good common sense, good strategies and experience. And, a lot of people know a lot about weight loss, right? If I told you, Bert, that, being in a calorie deficit, like eating less calories than you burn is the key to losing weight, that wouldn't shock you.
No.
I don't think it would shock many people, because most people know that.
I've heard this.
Exactly. We're like, okay, but if I told you you can't eat pizza 7 nights a week and lose weight, you're going to be like, well, duh.
Yeah.
Like, not shocking. So it's like, people know enough, but there's a lot of stuff that they don't know that they don't know. We had the conversation about processed food.
Yeah.
Right? And you were like, sugar's a drug. And I'm like, well, it's not. But in the right combination of things, it makes your brain want a lot more of it.
But if someone, going back to that sugar is a drug though, I mean, if someone had a teaspoon of sugar, would they want to go back and get another teaspoon of sugar? They might. I mean, it is the sweets, why sweets are such a big thing.
Maybe.
But I don't know if it's, I guess most sweets have other things besides just sugar in them. It's something else to trigger the...
Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a late night craving for a teaspoon of sugar?
No. So
That's the thing that differentiates it. It's, does your brain crave it? Because we have like a Pavlovian response to this.
That's true.
Like, there are times where, often it's after a few drinks, and you're like, I really want Taco Bell, or I really want pizza.
That's a good reason not to drink. No.
But like, our brain is like, I really want this thing because I know it's going to give me this dopamine high. It's kind of like an addict, right? Like, the issue is not necessarily dealing with the drug. It's like, I can't stop thinking about the drug. Well, when we're certain periods of time, when we're dieting, when we've been drinking, it's like, I can't stop thinking about the pizza, the burger, the whatever it is. And that, like, once you can unpack that and make it so that that's less of an issue, then it's much easier to lose weight. Because most people can lose weight. It's keeping it off and using an approach that's sustainable that's the problem.
That's the key.
That really is, and that's the one that no one wants to kind of talk about. It's much sexier to talk about the hook that helps people lose weight in a new and exciting way. There's no new and exciting ways. Like,
no, as the Bible said, there's nothing new under the sun. There's
exactly,
nothing new.
It's you know, we'll. There was one I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, "Well, I started this diet and I took out this specific chemical or ingredient or nutrient that's found in beans and a bunch of other stuff." And I'm like, I'm really happy that you're losing weight.
Good for you.
Like, that's awesome. I'm glad that you feel better, but also, like, it doesn't have to be that hard.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that one ingredient that's, you know, unless you are gluten intolerant, and my wife's gluten intolerant, I'm very sensitive to it, but, like, cutting out gluten won't make you lose weight. Well, it might make you feel better, because typically when you cut out gluten, you cut out a lot of processed foods.
Yeah.
Cookies, brownies, sweetbreads, pound cake, pizza. Right, yeah, you'll probably feel better because you stopped eating a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And crap doesn't make you feel good for the most part. You can enjoy it in moderation.
It's short-term pleasure, and then you feel bad afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
like a bowl of ice cream. We're like, it tasted good at the time, and now it's like,
Yeah. And like, there's a skill to being able to enjoy food. Most people like embrace gluttony, which is I'm gonna eat all of it because it's giving me that brain high. They don't realize that's what's happening. But you eat the entire tub of ice cream. It's just your brain lighting up and going, give me more, give me more.
Yeah. Boom.
And then boom, you're like, why the hell did I do that? I feel terrible.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, my stomach is bloated. I'm gassy. My wife doesn't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
All of these bad things. And it was like, well, you know, if you were able to enjoy like a spoonful or two or three and genuinely stop there and take the moment to enjoy it for what it is and not give in to the, you know, the brain going, give me more, and be able to stop, then you can actually enjoy it because you don't deal with the after effects. And I think that's a big thing. It's kind of like, I make a similar analogy to alcohol. Like, alcohol should be enjoyed before the point where you get sloppy drunk.
Yeah. What's the point of that point?
Exactly.
Thankfully, I've never been drunk. I just like, I don't see the benefit of like drinking until you don't remember anything, and then neighbors are laughing at you. I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if I enjoy a beer, great. I'm going to try to stop. And it's just, you know, just driven to like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to. And but I don't understand the draw. And some people just like, on the weekend they go drink until they don't remember anymore. I'm like, what's wrong? There's something else deeper going on here.
Yeah.
When you talk about, and that's sad. It's heartbreaking. But in moderation.
Yeah.
Life in moderation.
Exactly.
So,
and I think there's some really good analogies there, right? You just said that, you know, people who drink to blackout drunk, there's something deeper going on there. There's the same thing when you finish the entire pizza.
Yeah.
It's not quite as destructive.
Or the tub of ice cream.
Or the tub of ice cream.
Thing. It is the same.
It's like, there's something deeper there that you need to figure out if you're going to fix this. And just saying, I'm not going to do it is like an alcoholic saying, I'm just not going to drink alcohol. There are some people that can do it, but the vast majority of people are going to eventually relapse into the same old way of thinking. So yeah, I think that's a great, you know, parallel.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Do you want to drink something else real quick?
Sure. I'm gonna drink too much. Pour this out.
Fair enough. Oh yeah.
No, I mean I can save it for later.
There you go.
So tell me about, so you started this in COVID-ish. COVID-ish time. So 2001, late 2020, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2021, 2020.
It was about 2020 something. That was kind of like when I, really kind of started putting my head down, nose to the grindstone, and just building something.
So did you start studying a lot about the different whiskeys? So are you like a sommelier? Is that what it is of whiskey? Do you understand all the different time to like talk turkey with those who know what they're doing and like, oh, he does know what he's talking about?
That came a lot more recently.
Okay.
So to help whiskey drinkers lose weight, I didn't need to be an expert in whiskey. I needed to be an expert in fitness, which thankfully, you know.
Yeah, you already had that.
Yeah, I don't want to call myself an expert, but I was doing, fairly
degree in
accomplished.
it, so that helps.
Yeah, but more recently, I wanted to get into like more of the in-depth stuff.
Okay.
And there is not an official sommelier in whiskey like there is in wine. There isn't that protected title. But
why not?
I don't know, honestly.
Maybe
I guess
it should be. Maybe you should like.
Well, so there is some. I think it is actually a protected verbiage because down in Austin. there is a place called Crowded Barrel, and they actually run a whiskey som program. Not sommelier, it's som.
Okay.
I assume because of some kind of protected
You can't
verbiage.
use sommelier.
Yeah. And I didn't do that course, but I did go down to that distillery and I took something else that was a company out of Kentucky. They do a certification called the Executive Bourbon Steward. And it kind of teaches you how to talk the talk with bourbon and a little bit to the other degrees as well. So that's when I kind of, really deep dived on the nuance of it before I was a casual enthusiast. I was like, this is a bourbon, this is a rye, this is a scotch, this is an Irish, this is a old bourbon, this is a young bourbon.
You could blind test those and tell what they are?
I'd like to think so.
Okay.
Yeah. The only ones that are hard, depending on the scotch and Irish are both made from barley.
Yeah.
So they have similar malty notes.
Cousins.
They're cousins.
They're cousins.
Yeah, but I mean, if you get a smoky scotch, most people can pick out smoky scotch, and then Irish is typically more buttery because they don't use peat in the Irish process for the most part. So if it's a smoky scotch, you should absolutely be able to tell the difference. I'd like to think I can. If you've got a very close scotch and Irish, some people mix those two up. But yeah, bourbons, ryes, scotch, Irish, Japanese is another interesting category as well. The Japanese was actually a Wild West. It was only recently that they started introducing regulations for Japanese whiskey.
Oh, really?
Before that, Japanese whiskey was just possibly made in Japan.
Maybe.
Like some people were just importing scotch, putting it in a new bottle, sticking a label on it, and then selling it for a profit. Yeah. And it was like, it went into and out of Japan.
That's funny.
So yeah, Japan
so
was
now,
the Wild West.
there is documentation saying that it is made here now, kind of, maybe?
Yeah, there's more of an official process. It has to adhere to certain rules.
Okay.
So like bourbon is a really good one because it's very well known. It's obviously it has to be made in America, not Kentucky. So bourbon can be made in Tennessee or Texas. Anywhere.
What's Kentucky is? How is it different from not made in Kentucky?
So bourbon is still made in Kentucky, but if it's made in Kentucky and aged in Kentucky for at least 1 year, it is now Kentucky bourbon.
So it's different.
Yeah, it's the way it was described to me is when you make a bourbon, right? You and I are partners in a distillery, and we make a bourbon, and we want to go get our label for our bourbon. We don't go through this matrix of, is it this? Yes, no, well then it's this. What we basically do is we have an application, kind of like a government building, and we go, hey, we want our whiskey to be called Kentucky whiskey. So we go up to the Kentucky whiskey or Kentucky bourbon window, and they go, all right, you fit all of these requirements. Here's your label. You can call it Kentucky bourbon. Whereas maybe we don't want to call it Kentucky bourbon. We want to call it straight bourbon, which is a different set of rules. Okay. Straight bourbon can be made anywhere, but it has to be aged for at least 2 years. And if it's aged for less than 4 years, we have to say exactly how old it is. So if we want to call it straight bourbon, we go to the straight bourbon window, and they go, it was aged for at least 2 years, you can have this label. If we just want it to be called bourbon, then we go to the bourbon window.
And that's anything goes for that.
It's got to be certain things. It's got to be like 51% corn in like the recipe, basically. It's got to be distilled at less than 160 proof. It's got to be in the barrel at less than, I think, 125. There's a few other things in there as well. But it's just, kind of going through it and being like, does it check the boxes? Okay. So the Executive Bourbon Steward kind of allowed me to learn all of that stuff and then learn how to communicate it.
That's cool.
As well. So, I'll do like private tastings, classes as well. We recently did a class for 24 people, which was a lot of fun. And it was a blind tasting of 4 of the different Weller wheated bourbons. So that's a brand that a lot of people chase after. It's typically highly regarded, and it's like, hey, can you tell the difference between the cheap version, the expensive version, and the really expensive version?
Out of the 24 people, how many could tell the difference from the expensive one?
The amount of people that could tell the difference was pretty high. The amount of people that correctly identified all 4 was 1. So it's harder than you think it's going to be.
So what is this one?
So this one is actually a fun project. So you know how I mentioned the whiskey groups earlier? So this was a group project, and what they did is they took you won't be able to find this in stores. This is just a talking point for us. But they took a whiskey barrel, filled it with honey, aged it for a while, then dumped the honey out.
Aged the honey just by itself in the barrel, or with the whiskey?
No, just the honey.
Just honey in a bourbon barrel.
The honey is taking on some of the bourbon barrel flavors.
Okay.
And some of the honey is soaking into the bourbon barrel.
Okay.
Then they dumped the honey out and then filled it with whiskey. And then aged the whiskey in the honey.
2 years? How long do you...
I think it was a few months.
Okay.
It wasn't that long. Honey is a very potent flavor,
yeah.
So you don't need that long. And then it takes on the honey notes. So this is
what this is?
This is a honey barrel finished.
So do the same way with a little bit on the tongue first?
A little bit on the tongue first. Give it a sniff. So it's still going to taste like bourbon.
Yeah.
But you're picking up like some sweeter notes. I get a lot of sweet on the nose.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A little bit sweeter on the palate, but you also get there's a little bit of woodiness in there, or nuttiness maybe.
From the barrel, I guess.
Yeah, from the barrel, or if the honey just has that particular kind of flavor. So this is very different to that, because this was a bourbon finished in honey, and this is a rye which has sweeter notes.
So is that sold somewhere, or this is someone just tried it?
This was just a group of guys got together. We all pitched in one bottle of bourbon, one specific bottle of bourbon. We all got one bottle of bourbon back. We each paid $10 to, I think, fund the barrel and then the sticker as well. So the sticker makes it kind of fun.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of these. A lot of these whiskey groups, they will buy a barrel of whiskey from a distiller, and then they will put their own label on it, normally on the back, and it's their own fun thing. You might have a Batman themed bottle.
Yeah.
Or it might be flavored a specific way. So if
does it matter which kind of bourbon or whiskey they gave that you mixed? Was all the same kind?
Yes. So it was all
specifically the same.
It was all that Belmead Reserve bourbon, and yeah. So
that's interesting. It tastes good. It's different.
Very different.
Yeah.
The closest thing you could probably put to it is Jack Daniel's honey. But Jack Daniel's honey to me is sickly sweet, and it's very
over
low,
the top.
Very low proof. I don't even know if it's 80 proof. I think it's lower than that. So it's thin and sweet, and to me it's too I don't know.
Syrupy.
Yeah, it's too syrupy. This to me is Jack Daniel's if it grew up. So it's higher proof. I think it's still almost 110 proof. So it's got a lot of viscosity with.
Explain what 110 proof means if someone didn't.
Yeah, so most whiskey that you see on a shelf is 80 proof, 40% alcohol. Proof is just double whatever the alcohol percentage is. So when you buy a bottle of Jim Beam and it's 80 proof, it is 40% alcohol, 60% water. And that water, both of those liquids have been flavored by the barrel in the aging process. And then, 110 proof, it's obviously more alcohol compared to water. That will typically come with a different mouthfeel. So you will get something that's a little bit more viscous and carries a lot more flavor. A low-proof whiskey, you will sip it, you will swallow it, and it pretty much disappears.
Okay.
With a higher-proof whiskey, you'll sip it, you'll swallow it, and the flavor will actually stay on your tongue. Yeah. It's called the finish of the whiskey.
Okay.
You have the nose, you have the palate, which is the initial taste, and then you have the finish, which is after you swallow. And better whiskeys will have a better finish. Some finishes are very punchy. You're like, oh God. Like when a teenager drinks whiskey for the first time, they're like, oh my God, that burns in my throat.
Yeah.
That would be
gasoline.
Exactly. That would be an example of a finish that no one's really chasing.
Okay.
What we want instead is not the alcohol to stay, but those flavors to stay.
Okay.
So when we drink this and we swallow it, we still taste honey even after it's gone down.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's a fun one. I thought I'd bring that as an interesting talking point.
It is definitely interesting.
So yeah, once you swallow it, pay attention to how long it sticks on the tongue.
It does.
For a while.
Yeah. More than that one.
More than that one. Yeah, and I think that's because that honey adds a viscousness to it. The honey was dumped out of the barrel. It's not like they poured honey into the whiskey. But there was
dumped out the barrel.
Took the when you empty a beer barrel or something, just the emptying of the liquid. Same thing with the whiskey.
So that's 30 minutes and cuts off.
Oh, gotcha.
What's the battery died? The battery died? No, what was the battery? That's just a cutaway shot if I need it.
Oh, gotcha.
Interesting. No, that's... So have you gone to see the process of how or have you studied the process of how they make these and just...
Yeah, so I've done a few distillery tours. Like the Jack Daniel's tour is really fun, but it's very commercialized. There's a distillery in Denison, Texas, called Iron Root, and they do a really cool tour. It's like $5 to go, and what they do is they really kind of let you in on the process. They really do a good job of explaining it. It's a relatively small distillery, so you get to see all the parts of it.
That's neat.
So I've done a few distillery tours, and then when we were doing the executive bourbon steward class down in Austin, they have a distillery on site. So you got to see every single part of it, all the way from the milling of the grain. You get to taste the grain and be like, oh, this is cool. This eventually becomes whiskey. It doesn't taste very good right now.
No.
But they basically turn cornmeal into whiskey. And they see the cooking process, which is where you take the grain mixed with water and you heat it up, help break down some of the carbohydrates. And then you add enzymes so that you can ferment it. And we get alcohol out of the sugar that's in there. Then you basically end up with what's called like distiller's beer. And then you distill it once and it comes out to like 20 to 25% alcohol. That's called low wines. And then you distill it again, and that's when you get whiskey. But it looks like vodka. It's a clear liquid.
Okay.
It comes off the still of the distilling process, which is basically boiling it to get the alcohol off and leave some of the water. And then it's clear, and then you put it in the barrel, and that's where it picks up all of the color.
From the wood.
Yes. And that's why if you see like a 18 or 20-year-old bourbon, it should be a lot darker. Than something, maybe not like coffee dark, but like definitely on the brown tea dark, as opposed to something that's much lighter, amber. More yellow, amber, exactly. So that's one of the ways you can tell. If you don't know what you're drinking, you can look at the color and it'll be able to kind of give you some clues.
I don't know how to start off clear. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the darker it is, the longer it's been aged, most likely.
Most likely. The only caveat to that, and we're in a great example because we're in Texas, is that Texas has a climate which is much more variable than a place like Scotland. Scotland is much cooler, much more rainy, right? It's a much more steady temperature. Texas has wild up and down swings. Really hot in the summer, can get really cold in the winter. So the process of aging happens when the liquid expands in heat, and it expands into the barrel. And then it contracts when it gets cooler, and it pulls out some of that flavor. With each expansion-contraction cycle, you get more and more flavor.
Interesting.
Now, that happens a lot more often in Texas than it does in Scotland. So a 2-year-old Texas whiskey might be aged, in terms of the barrel, more than a 4-year-old whiskey in Scotland.
Do they leave the barrels outside?
They put them in basically a big shed.
Okay. But they're not air conditioned.
Not air conditioned.
It's going to be hot, it's going to be cold, it's going to be...
Exactly. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why Kentucky is so well known for bourbon. It has a good climate for it, and they also have really good tasting water. Okay. So when you add water to the whiskey that comes out of the barrel...
Spring water, or they use just... Is it filtered water?
So some places do use filtered water now, but the limestone in Kentucky acts as a filter for the water. And then, they pull it from the spring, they mix it with the whiskey, and that's what gives it a pleasant taste that a lot of us have kind of grown up drinking. But, obviously, Jack Daniel's, very famous Tennessee whiskey.
It's not Kentucky.
It's not Kentucky. Yeah. And then we've got a growing number of Texas distilleries as well. The Iron Root, the one I mentioned before, they put out some really good stuff. They actually won World Bourbon of the Year in 2020.
Where does that take place? Kentucky? World?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. I imagine Kentucky. I feel like most big bourbon events.
Mecca of bourbon and whiskey. Yeah.
So that's
interesting.
But Garrison Brothers is a famous one. Balcones is a famous one. There's a few Texas distilleries that are kind of like coming into their own now for sure.
Good for them.
Yeah.
So you say you get most of your clients through Facebook.
Pretty much. It's old school kind of networking and advertising.
And I'm assuming they pass your name on once they find you, and they'll pass their name on to someone else, word of mouth.
Yeah, word of mouth, referrals. I'm fairly active in terms of posting on Facebook about my process. I give away free information to help people who are not yet ready for coaching. And then I talk about my client success. And basically when someone finds me or, we have a conversation on a post in a whiskey group and we end up, as Facebook friends after that, they'll kind of stalk me for like 6 months normally. Be like, is this guy for real? It sounds too good to be true. And then eventually they're like, hey, Alex, like, I've seen what you've done.
What's the catch?
Well, yeah. Like, help me explain this process. And, if it makes sense, like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And we go through that. And that's, how I get it. And I think in the last, I guess 2 years at this point, I think I've had over 100 people through my doors.
Okay.
Which for, I'm a one-person company with limited capacity for coaching.
Yeah. So what's your goal? What's your goal in 5-10 years? What do you think?
That's a really good question. And it's honestly not something I spend a ton of time thinking about, but I would probably like to grow the business to a point where I can bring in another coach or two under me to take away some of the less important coaching conversations. They're all important, but some are more important than others. Like the very
take more time to try to work through.
Yeah, part of my program is Zoom calls going through stuff in real time. Part of my program is systemized, right? We talked about the things that are important to everyone. Protein, fiber, how we think about the sustainability of our diet approach, understanding levels of processing of food and stuff like that. I'm a big tinkerer of things, so I have my program that is then tailored around the individual.
Everyone's individual. That's
yes.
Individual is the right word for that.
Exactly. But that base program can always be improved. So okay. I'm like a creator, a tinkerer, an operator, and then also growing the business in terms of advertising, marketing, reaching more people. I would love to have 100 people a year, 150 people a year. And honestly, I'm pretty happy. I'm not someone who wants to run a multi-million-dollar coaching business. I don't think. Maybe I do. We'll see. We'll see when we get there. Yeah. But there's a real thing of more money, more problems.
Yeah.
And I kind of like having a chilled out lifestyle. So as the business grows, I want to obviously help more people in the process, make more money, but also not make my lifestyle one that is unsustainable.
Yeah. Back to sustainability.
Back to sustainability.
Yeah.
It's a recurring theme. So yeah, I'm not one for flashy cars and expensive watches. It's like, if I can live in a reasonably nice house, have the things I like, travel a lot, see the world, that's probably one thing. I tell you what, 5-10 years from now, if I can be in a place where I can just drop everything and go take a week's vacation with almost no notice, if I could be in a position to do that, I'm a happy camper.
If you're virtual of what you're doing, if it's not all...
Yeah,
like right now, you could virtually, and with Starlink, you can hook up somewhere and be anywhere.
I could do that, but then I would spend all of my vacation coaching.
Well, that's true.
So
if you have a team covering it.
Exactly.
When you can step back, I'm thinking any business, when you can step back and not be running everything, then you have a business. Otherwise, you have a
job,
or a hobby.
Yeah, most times
it's a hobby. So, if you can step back, and that's kind of where I'm in filmmaking, grow a team to where, okay, we can focus on what I want to focus on.
Yeah.
And continue. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, good for you. I love, as an entrepreneur and one who's, tried my thing for a long time, it's nice to see someone who's doing it and it's working right now and continue to grow.
I appreciate it.
That's good for you.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. Seeing something and stepping back and get the big picture going. Okay, I can take something I enjoy, and there's tons of guys out there, or people, not just guys, who enjoy a good whiskey. And okay, you don't have to change your life. You don't have to, do a complete 180 and walk away. I'm like, no, you can still enjoy it and still make a long-term goal to be a better person. Make your body a little bit better.
And I think there's something probably refreshing about the idea of not chasing six-pack abs, right?
Every some can do it, but it won't last.
No, and I've been in that position. I've done some photo shoots and stuff like that, where it's you get really, really dialed down in terms of being in shape and stuff like that. And as soon as the photo shoot's done, yeah, exactly. There's a big sigh followed by a massive craving for everything.
Give me pizza.
Pizza's normally the first thing. I like pizza, but it's just
good pizza out there. And cauliflower pizza does not count, for the record. Cauliflower pizza is not pizza.
I found one good cauliflower pizza, which is we keep 3 or 4 of them in the freezer. And it's like, when you get caught short and you're like, well, I don't have anything in the fridge. I don't have any, I was like, well, let's just throw a pizza in.
Yeah.
And we're like, you have half a pizza. It's like 450 calories or something. And you're like, cool, we're good with that. But, good pizza is still non-cauliflower based. And that's part of the 10%.
So there's a company, or buy flour from where's it from? Italy or something. That's like a lot of the flour in the United States is what's the gluten problem.
Yeah.
So you buy it from somewhere else that hadn't been messed up yet,
yeah.
and you can have the pizza and actually doesn't bother you. So it all depends. I don't know the breakdown of the flour from other parts of the world.
I don't know.
Someone was, I think my wife was talking about that. I'm like, that's worth interesting looking into. Can you make bread that's not as bad for you? Because the United States has messed up all kinds of grain stuff.
It has.
If it's the stuff they're putting on it. I don't know what it is. It's not, and then I don't know.
Going a bit further into that, the type of flour doesn't affect the calories.
Yeah.
Right. So
as far as your body, though, the gluten intolerance, it might be related to some of the flour.
Yeah. But when you're using, if you're making bread from scratch, for example, you're probably not adding in the sugar and the salt, all the stuff that makes it kind of craveable over here.
Yeah.
So if you're making bread from scratch, it's gonna be healthier than whatever you buy on the shelf.
Who Michael Pollan is, the writer. He did Omnivore's Dilemma and several other books.
Maybe
Netflix had a few documentaries of
Gotcha.
his. But he talked about if you want to eat donuts, make them from scratch.
Yeah.
And you can eat all the ones you want, because the thing is, you're not going to do that. You're not going to make it every day from scratch. He says so you make it from scratch and you can eat that thing.
Absolutely.
That's fine. I'm like, you'll learn that you're not going to do that, and you'll walk from it.
It's funny you bring that up. One of the things that we talk about in my coaching program is setting your environment up for success.
Yeah.
If you take a cocaine addict and you put little prepackaged pieces of cocaine all over the house, they're not going to stay clean, are they? No. But then we expect ourselves to crush it on a diet and lose weight while having cookies and chips and all of that stuff in the pantry.
Yeah.
Again, nothing is off the table. No one's saying you can't have a cookie every now and then. But don't keep the drugs in the house.
Yeah.
Right? If you want them bad enough, you will drive somewhere and go get them. But the chances are is you don't want them bad enough to go get them. Yeah. You just had a craving because you saw them, and then your brain goes...
You saw an ad on TV, and you're like, yeah,
oh, yeah. Dude, ads on TV.
Turn off the TV. Just don't even know. So, yeah.
But yeah, if you want it bad enough, you'll go drive. But don't keep them where it's line of sight. Yeah, don't make it easy to screw up. Instead,
make it a little bit easier to succeed.
Exactly. I think that's the stuff that people don't know, right? You don't know the stuff that you don't know. It's environmental design when it comes to weight loss, huge. But everyone just thinks, well, I just got to cut out sugar, and if I do that, it'll be fine. I was like, no, not quite.
All right. It's more than that. Try one more, and then we'll
one more?
wrap up. Yeah, a little
Sounds
bit.
Sounds good. So this one is a wheated bourbon. So we talked about a rye, and that's a normal bourbon finished in honey. And then this one...
So this is a normal bourbon also? Or how is this one different?
This one's not a bourbon. This is
that's not.
This
is
a rye whiskey.
Okay.
So the difference between bourbon and rye is basically the recipe. So you make whiskey from grain, right?
Okay.
Bourbon is always made from majority corn.
Okay, it's corn versus grain.
Corn versus, and then...
wheat or
wheat or rye.
Okay.
Rye grain. So ryes are made from rye, unsurprisingly. Bourbons are made from...
Rye is made from rye?
Yes.
Okay, amazing how that works.
It's funny.
Yeah.
But bourbon isn't made from bourbon grain. Made from corn. And then, but it's not 100% corn. Bourbon is mostly corn, and then it's often a little bit of rye and a little bit of barley. That's what most bourbon on the shelf is.
Okay.
Wheated bourbons replace the rye with wheat. And what that often does is it kind of smooths it out a little bit. So you get rid of some of that spice, and you typically replace it with smooth or sweet or creamy. So I'm a big fan of wheated bourbons because they tend to smooth out some of the rough edges.
Okay.
But I like high proof wheated bourbons because if you smooth out the rough edges on an 80 proof whiskey, you're not left with much. You're like, okay, I drink this and I taste nothing. Maybe that's what some people want. Me, not so much.
Okay.
I want that oiliness, that mouthfeel. I want the finish. Yeah, I want all that good stuff. But with a wheated bourbon, now it's a little smoother. It's not as spicy. You lose some of the stuff that I personally am not a big fan of. Some people love high rye bourbon. I don't really care for it. So, same deal. Give it a bit of sniff. We may still have some of the honey whiskey in our glasses. I'm like, I got a fair amount of honey on that.
It's like, it smells like honey.
So you'll notice on this, probably once you've swallowed it, you don't really get a whole lot of spice. There's a little bit up front, but there's not as much on the back end. And that's because it's a wheated bourbon. You smooth out some of those edges.
Okay.
So yeah, this is all fun. You can actually get whiskey that is made with 100% wheat. That's...
Some people like that, I guess.
So I like it a lot, but again, I like the higher proof stuff.
Okay.
And it has to be done well. 100%, like... Wheat whiskey that is just wheat can be really boring.
Okay.
But if done well, it can be, a flavor profile I really, really enjoy. A really great beginner whiskey is Woodford Reserve does a wheat whiskey. Normal Woodford Reserve is bourbon. And they have a few different versions. They've got the double oaked, which is really good as well. But they make a wheated whiskey with just wheat, no corn, no rye, no barley. And it's basically the Woodford bottle with a red label on it. It's like $30.
Okay.
But it's a really great way to try wheated whiskey and figure out if it's something that you like. So it'll be very smooth, very,
What, this one called smooth? Is this smooth?
Yeah, relatively smooth. I mean, it's 113 proof. So it's a fairly high proof whiskey, but to me it doesn't drink like a high proof whiskey. It doesn't burn. You don't get a lot of alcohol there. I've had, some 110 proof whiskeys where you drink it and you're like, gosh, that's a lot of alcohol in that. You don't necessarily get that with this, I don't think.
It's a little more mellow.
A little bit more mellow.
How can people find you? You on whiskeyweightloss.com or something? Or?
Correct. You nailed it.
Yeah. I assumed you have that if you have the name.
Whiskeyweightloss.com and then facebook.com/whiskeyweightloss is how you find me personally. Throw me a follow if you want whiskey and or weight loss related content. And I throw up a bunch of stuff 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So that's the best place to find me. I think I have an Instagram account. I don't think I posted to it in about a year.
Yeah, I forget to.
I
know it's the same company officially, but I mean, it's a different. Maybe you should try Instagram. Something. There are different people who are only on Instagram and only on Facebook. I don't know.
For me, Instagram is very visual based, right? Yeah. You have to communicate your message through picture. Just like TikTok, you communicate through video.
You do videos on Facebook?
No.
Maybe you should. Maybe you should. I'm a video guy. Maybe video is good.
Maybe. Yeah. I love writing. Like old school writing, like if blog posts was still a thing that did well on the internet, that's probably what I would write.
Okay.
But I love writing short form written Facebook posts.
Yeah, I've seen them.
So that's my wheelhouse. And I'm a big believer in business of not necessarily doing what's best, but doing the thing that you will stay consistent with.
Yeah, it sounds like you're...
It sounds like my message,
yeah,
right?
It sounds like your message. So if you're good writing, then that's your thing.
That's the thing. And I probably grow slower as a business because of that. If I went all in on video, I would probably grow faster. But I would be...
As a video guy, I would say that's probably true. But do what's good for you. So.
But I would be so stressed doing it that I would probably hate it. Yeah. And it's like, work is a lot more fun when it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like work when I'm writing. It really feels like work when I'm video editing. Now, maybe I get to a point in business where I can just outsource all of my video editing and I just record it, I send them the raw footage, and they do the rest.
Yep.
And when I get to that point, that'll be wonderful, and that'll be like pouring gasoline on a fire. But right now, I've got a little campfire going with just my written stuff, and that's
keep it going.
Good enough for me right now.
That's good. Well, best of luck. It's good meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This has been educational and fun and different, so I've learned a lot today.
Awesome. Well, that's all I can hope for.
Best of luck. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bert.
Of course. And I'll start recording.
Awesome.